What's up, guys? We're going to continue Chapter 8 here, looking at Section 7, where we're talking about factoring special cases. We've already worked on multiplying special cases, so now we're going to work on kind of undoing that by factoring it. So we're going to learn how to factor perfect square trinomials and the differences of two squares. So let's get moving. All right, so first of all, you'll want to pause and copy this down. This is for factoring perfect square trinomials. And what you need to get good at is recognizing when this first term and the third term are perfect squares, and then you check the middle and say, well, what is going on here in the middle? Is it going to be 2 times the square root of this times the square root of that? Now that part might be kind of weird, but it'll make a little bit more sense if I'm looking at numbers. So for instance, down here, this is a perfect square. It's 2n. This is a perfect square. Its square root is 3. So if I do this times this, it's 6n. And if I multiply that by 2, it's 12. All right, so I know that these two things are squared. Let's see how this plays out. Okay, so before we get into that, I know people talk a lot about this whole zombie apocalypse thing, and we think it's real scary, but I think there is a more sinister apocalypse that could happen. It might happen. You need to watch over your shoulder. What about a statue apocalypse? My favorite is absolutely Ronald McDonald whacking on that guy. All right, so here we go. Factoring a perfect square trinomial. It says, what is the factor form of this? I need to be able to recognize this as a perfect square and this as a perfect square. This, by the way, is always going to be plus. This is going to determine our sign. So we're going to just try this out here. So perfect square of x would be x squared. So the square root of that is x. The square root of 36 is 6. And then this is minus. So I'm going to put minus here. This is the same thing as x minus 6 squared. This is just being able to recognize those things. Now, the one thing that you always need to check is this going to work for that middle term? So kind of an easy way to do this is I see a perfect square, I see a perfect square, I'm just going to write these out, and then I'm going to double check and make sure that this works. And the way that you can double check is going back to that when we were multiplying binomials squared. So here I'd have x times negative 6 is negative 6x times 2 is negative 12x. All right, it works. So I know that that is the correct answer. That's kind of the way I think about it. You could get to this answer by factoring through this the long way by writing out the factors of 36, but you would eventually find that the two that you get are 6 and 6. So this is just kind of the shortcut in getting used to recognizing this. All right, so there's one for you to try. The answer will be up in 3, 2, 1. There you go. I got a perfect square and a perfect square, so I get x plus 3. Really, really simple. Let's keep moving. All right, so factoring special cases. This is sometimes called the difference of two squares. It says for all real numbers a and b, if it is a perfect square minus another perfect square, then that is going to be a sum difference, which we talked about earlier in this chapter as well. So a sum difference of the square root of a and the square root of b. For instance, x squared minus 64 is going to be x plus 8, x minus 8. 25x squared is 5x. 36 is 6, so it's 5x plus 6, 5x minus 6. The sum difference. All right, so that is the difference of two squares. Again, this is a shortcut thing helping us recognize how to get there. So how does this look? Well, I got a perfect square minus a perfect square, so that's going to be x plus 3, the square root of both of them, x minus 3. This one is going to be 4x plus 9, and then 4x minus 9. These should be really, really easy for you guys, especially, I mean, you need to be able to recognize your perfect squares. So if you don't have that list of perfect squares down, you need to get it down and you need to memorize it ASAP. All right, so you go ahead and try. The answer will be up in 3, 2, 1. All right, here's what I got. Check yours against mine. Let's keep moving. All right, so what if I have to factor out a common factor first? You should always check for this. Even if it's not these, difference of squares or whatever it is, always look for things that factor out at the beginning. So 24g squared minus 6 has a GCF of 6 right here. So I'm going to factor that out before I do anything else. So that 6 is going to come in the front. This divided by 6 is 4g squared minus 1. 1 is the number that students oftentimes don't recognize as a perfect square. It is a perfect square, so don't forget that. Here I have a difference of squares, so that means it's going to be 6 times the square root of this, 2g plus 1, the square root of that, and then over here, 2g minus 1. That is the factored form of this right here. All right, so make sure that you are recognizing 1 as a perfect square. Here's a couple for you to try. Go ahead and pause. The answers will be up in 3, 2, 1. All right, here is what I got. So make sure that you check both of these and see if you got the same thing. If not, you need to go back and try to find your mistakes. I believe that's it for today. Yeah, extra short lesson, so you're welcome. Hopefully you took good notes. I'll see you all in class.